Be'ezras Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Zevachim Daf Nun Zayin, and we are holding a diet. Let's just start from the Mishnah again, Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis, a familiar Mishnah, um, and let me make it large. So the Mishnah says like this: Habachor, Habachor v'Hamasa v'Pesach Kochim Kalam. The Bechor, Maser is the Meiser from the animal, which is every year whatever is born from your stock, you should put it into a pen and then let it out through one door. And each 10th behema you bring it up as a carbon shlamim. That's called Meiser behema. You give 10% of all the animals that were born that year, and the Pesach and the carbon Pesach. Kadishim kalam, they're considered kachim kalam, lighter kedusha. So therefore, shchitasim b'chol mokom ba'azara, wherever you are in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Azara, you can shech the animal there. The daman tom matona achas, and there's only one splash of blood onto the mizbeach. Ulvad, the only point is she'itin keneged hayisoid. You have to put the blood towards on the part of the mizbeach that has the yisoid on it, as that extra foundation, which is on north and west, or you could put it on south. You can put it on the south, or you can put it a little bit on the east. Hi, Lewis. We just began the Mishnah. Shashina ba'ach, which is on Daf Num Vav Amud Beis. Shina. Okay. Hi, we just began. We're on the Mishnah on Daf Num Vav Amud Beis.
Okay.
Shina ba'achilasan. There's a difference on the eating halachas regarding the different regarding the different karbanas between the bechor, the masa, and the pesach. HaBechor, the carbon bechor, ne'echol la kahanim, is eaten only by kahanim because it's their gift. Let me make it bigger. Ne'echol la kahanim, right? V'hamasa meiser behema is l'chol adam. A person slaughters the animal in the Beis Hamikdash, and it's l'chol adam for any person. Any person is allowed to partake in that carbon. V'ne'echolim b'chol ha'ir, and you eat the animal in the entire city of Yerushalayim. You could eat it anywhere you want, right? You could eat it anywhere you want. B'chol machal means you can prepare it any which way. The shnei yomim v'layla echad, and you have time for 2 days and 1 night to eat these karbonas, the bechor and the maser. On the other hand, ha-pesach, the carbon pesach, ein nechal ela b'layla. It's only eaten by nighttime, not during the day that you slaughter it on the afternoon erev Pesach, but you have to wait till the Seder night to eat it. Ve'ein nechal ela ad chatzos, and it's only eaten until midnight. Ve'ein nechal ela lemini yov. It's only eaten by those that were invited to partake in the carbon. You can't come uninvited to eat from the carbon Pesach. Ve'ein nechal ela tzali, and there's a way and method how you can eat it. You could only eat the meat when it's roasted. Of course, there are other halachas that are relevant to the carbon pesach, that you have to eat it with matzah and marav, and Taisus deals with that. But the point is that there's a difference between the carbon pesach and the carbon bechor and meiser. Says the Gemara, Mantana, who's the author of our Mishnah? And who's the author of our Mishnah? So the Gemara says, because Amar Rav Chizda said, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, our author is the Rabbi Yossi Aglili. That Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that Bechor, Mas, and Pesach all have one din on how many sprinklings are supposed to be on the Mizbeach, which is one splash. Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Yossi Aglili said, by the carbon Bechor, right, Chel boy loy nemar, it doesn't say its fats, it's Chel bum, their fats. Domai loy nemar, it doesn't say its blood, ela domam, their blood. It says by Bechor, ves domam tizraik, splash their blood, right? So it's not in the plural, it's not in the singular, but it's in the plural. So it's not, the pasuk by Bechor is talking about not just Bechor, but it's also talking about other karbonas. Limate, this teaches you a Bechor, Maser, or Pesach, on the Bechor and Maser Pesach, Shetaunin Maten den domim ve'emen l'gam mizbeach. You have to give blood, and you have to give the fats on the mizbeach, and the amount is similar for each of them. And since the bechor, it says you throw one splash, so also by the Meiser and the Pesach, you also throw one splash. Keneged Yisoid Minolan. How do you know it has to be opposite the Yisoid? How do I know that you can't splash it on a part of the Mizbeach that does not have a Yisoid? Rab Lezer says, As Zrika me'oila. You can learn Exeir Shaba, Ves Domam Tizroik from Oila. It says Ves Domam Tizroik, and it says by Oila also the word Zrika, Vizaraka Yisai. So just like by Oila has to be by the Yisai, so also a Bechor has to be by the Yisai. You go to Amid Aleph Nun Zayin. Va'oila Gufa Manalan. How do you know the Oila has to be by the Yisai? Because the Pasuk says, El Yisoid Mizbach Ha'oila, that you sprinkle it by the Yisoid of the Mizbeach. As we've seen many times, that you sprinkle it just above the Yisoid, two splashes on each of the corners. Limit al oilas shatuna Yisoid, that a regular oila needs a Yisoid. Umal Ahalan, if you're going to compare the Bechor to an oila, so then imal halan, just by an oila, we could say shtei matana shehein arba, avkan shtei matana shehein arba. Just like by an oila, you have to give two splashes, which are really four. So also, I would think that by bechor also, you have to give two splashes, which are four. It's not enough to just give one throw, but you need to give, two splashes at the corner of the mizbeach. Abaya says there's a mute. There's a limitation written by the oila. Why does the Torah write the word saviv? You have to get it on all sides of the mizbeach by an oila. And why does the Torah write that the blood has to go saviv b'chatas, has to go on all around the mizbeach by a korban chatas? So these are two psukim that say the same idea, that by the korban oila and by the korban chatas, both have to touch all sides of the mizbeach. So that teaches you that only by the chatas and the oila it has to touch all sides of the mizbeach, but no other korban. Once you have two psukim saying the same idea, it cannot teach other karbanas to have that same idea. So therefore, by the oila and the chatas, yes, it has to touch all sides of the mizbeach. However, by the korban bechor, maser and pesach, just one splash is enough. Says the Gemara, Hani ein melamdim. That teaches you very well that if you have two psukim saying the same idea, then I can understand that it only applies by those karbanas. There is an opinion that says that even though the same idea is written twice by two different topics, you would say that could also apply by a third topic. So according to that opinion, despite the fact that it says it only by an oil and a chatas, we could probably say that a korban bechor should also need shtayim shein arba. Answers the Gemara, or four splashes. Answers the Gemara, no. Hava osham shloisha. You have a third korban that the Torah tells you it has to be around. Ushloisha vada ein malamdan. And by three, you certainly don't say it applies by other karbanas. So, bottom line is the Gemara found a source. Number one, the Gemara found a source that by Bechor, you sprinkle the blood on towards the part of the Mizbeach that has a Yisoid, but you only have to do one splash. That's it. And it's very different than Oila and Chatas and Ashim, which have to have basically a splash that reaches on all four sides of the Mizbeach. Furthermore, you learn an extra riboy that it says by Bechor, that it includes not only Bechor, but a Maser and a korban Pesach. Meiser Behema also need just one splash, and whatever applies by Bechor, it applies by Maser Behema and korban Pesach. Then we learned in the Mishnah, HaBechor Nechel HaKahanim. The korban Bechor is eaten by the Kahanim, right? So that the Bechor belongs to the kohen. You're supposed to, if you have a bechor from an ox or a goat or whatever, you give it to the kohen, and it's his personal property. But when he shechts it, he can shecht it he could shecht it, and the Torah doesn't tell you how long he has to eat it. What's the time limitation? So Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Manayin lebechor shenechol l'shnei yomim v'layla echad. How do I know that bechor is eaten for 2 days and one night? Shenema, because the pasuk says by a bechor, Hashem gives the meat to the kohen. Shenema, the Torah tells you, ubesarim yilach. Hashem says the carbon should be yours. Hatnufa uchushoy kayamin. And you should treat it like another carbon that has the breast and the thigh bone. So what carbon has a chazei tnufa and a shoy kayamin? There is really two carbonas. One is a shlamim and one is a toida. But the Gemara chooses to compare that the Torah is comparing the Bechor to a shlamim. The Torah says, it seems to say, the Chazek Shuk Shoykamin is telling you that the Bechor is like a shlamim. Ma shlamim, just like a shlamim, just like a shlamim is eaten for 2 days and one night. Af Bechor, so also Nechol Shnei Yomim V'Layla Echad. A Bechor is eaten for 2 days and one night. So when the Kohen brings the carbon Bechor, he has that day to eat it, that night to eat it, and the next day. So the Gemara says like this: it wasn't so simple that everybody knew that a Bechor was eaten Shnei Yomim V'Layla Echad, because after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, they actually learned Masechta Zevachim, or they learned all about Karbonos, and they had a discussion. V'zu shaila nishala lefnei chachamim bekeren b'yavna. This was a question that they asked. The chachamim asked. This was a question that they put up into to the Sanhedrin that was sitting in Keren b'yavna. And Keren b'yavna was a special place where when the Sanhedrin was thrown out of the Beis Hamikdash, they moved to this place called Keren b'yavna, and they discussed this matter. And the question was, Bechor l'kama nechel. How many days do the carbon Bechor was eaten? I believe this was after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, they still were discussing this concept of how many days do you have to eat the carbon Bechor. So Nana Rab Tarfon v'Amar. Rab Tarfon got up and said, "L'shnei yomim v'layla echad." He says it's for 2 days and 2 days and one night. Hayusham Talmud echad shebal leBeis Hamedrash. There was a student who came to the Beis Hamedrash Lifnei Chachamim Tchila for the first time, and he heard Rab Tarfon says that a Bechor is eaten for 2 days and one night. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Shemayin. His name was Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Amar Allah. So he asked Rabbi Menai Lecha. How did you know that? He asked Rab Tarfon. He challenged Rab Tarfon. Amalois, Rab Tarfon responded, B'ni, my son, Shlomim kachim kalam. Shlomim is a kachim kalam. Bechor kachim kalam. Ma Shlomim nechol shnei yom v'layla echad. Bechor nechol shnei yom v'layla echad. It's a simple binyanav. In other words, I don't know what to do with a Bechor, but I know it's kachim kalam. Shlomim, I know what to do. Take 2 days and one night. So I'll say that same idea applies by a Bechor. Amalois, or Rabbi Yosef Glili challenged Rabbi Tarfon. Amalei Rebbe, Bechor matana l'kayim. A Bechor is a gift to a kayim. V'chatas v'asham matana l'kayim. And a chatas and asham are a gift to a kayim. So why don't I say ma chatas v'asham, just like a chatas v'asham l'yoyim v'layla is for 1 day and one night. A Bechor l'yoyim v'layla. So I'll say the same idea that a Bechor is also for 1 day and one night. Amalei. So Rabbi Tarfon answered, well, you can compare it to Chatas and Asham, or I can compare it to a Shlamim. It's more similar, a Bechor is more similar to a Shlamim. Nadin dava mi dava v'nilma dava mi davar. It's more similar to a Shlamim. Because ma Shlamim ain't boin malachet, a carbon Shlamim, you don't have to do an Avera, you can bring any time a carbon Shlamim. A Bechor ain't a boin malachet. And a Bechor doesn't come because you did an Avera. So ma shlamim nechol l'shnei yomim v'layla echad, just like a shlamim is eaten for 2 days and one night. A bechor nechol l'shnei yomim v'layla echad. So I'm going to say a bechor is also for 2 days and one night. Amaloi. So Rabbi Yosef Glili said, Rebbe, no, it's more similar. A bechor is more similar to a chatas. Why? Why? Chatas v'asham matana l'kohen and b'char matana l'kohen. Chatas and asham is a gift to a kohen and b'char is a gift to a kohen. And furthermore, ma chatas v'asham ein boim b'nedav and dava, a b'char ein bar b'nedav and dava. So just like a chatas for other sham, you can't bring it voluntarily. You have to do an avera. So same thing, a b'char cannot be brought voluntarily. It has to be an actual b'char. Bottom line is, if you're just doing the comparison game, it's Rabbi Yosef Galili complained to Rab Tarfon that a bechor is more similar to a chatas or nashim. So why don't you say ma chatas v'ashim nechol yom be'echad, a bechor nechol yom be'echad? So it's eaten one day. So it's more compared to a chatas and nashim. So Kafetz Rabbi Akiva v'nistalek Rab Tarfon. Rabbi Akiva got up, and Rab Tarfon was silent. He was like it was like checkmate against Rab Tarfon. He didn't know how to answer it. Amaloi. So Rabbi Akiva said like this. So this is the way we're going to learn Rabbi Akiva. Here's the pasuk. Now here the Torah is going to tell you that the meat of the bechar is like a toida, not a shlamim. And therefore, it's the chazek tufa shleikat yomin is like a toida. And then l'cha yiyeh will tell you that besides you get the day and night like a toida, but you also get an extra day. That's what we're going to say. That's what the Gemara is going to say now. So the Gemara says like this. Ubsara nilachach. The Yikish first the Rabbi Kiva said Yikisha kasam kasam shleik shlamim ma shlamim nechol shnei yom v'layla echad apachon nechol shnei yom v'layla echad. First Rabbi Kiva said that hey, this we have a hekesh that compares the bechar to a shlamim. Amalai. So Rabbi Yosef Galil said, who said it's compared to a shlamim? He kasha chazav shleik shlamim banim kasha chazav shleik shel toida. The Torah doesn't tell you which chaz of shaykh it's compared to. I'm going to tell you that the hekesh of the pasuk is to a toida. Ma toida nechal siyam v'layla, abchor nechal liyam v'layla. So we have a hekesh, but according to Rabbi Yosef Galili, it teaches you, the hekesh teaches you that it's only compared to a toida, which is eaten for a day and night. How do you know you get an extra day? Amaloi. So Rabbi Kiva said, the Torah repeats that it's yours. But the pasuk begins that the meat is yours. Why did the Torah write by the bechor it's yours? That the Torah added that another havoya with a bechor, and therefore that you have an extra day. So bottom line is, according to Rabbi Akiva, teaches you that it's like a toida, and then you have this lecha yiyu, this extra pasuk lecha yiyu tells you you get an extra day for a bechar. So that's because Rabbi Akiva said that Rabbi Akiva agreed with Rabbi Yosef Aglili that chazek tunu shek yamin could refer to a toida. But kishnamru devarim lefnei Rabbi Yishmael, Amar Rabbi Yishmael said, impossible. Tzu v'imri loyla Rabbi Akiva, to Isu you made a mistake. Toida mehechel lamdim shlamim. Chadav lam mehekesh choyzum lamed behekesh. Ha'ein alecha lidim b'loshen acharein ela b'loshen rishon. Rabbi Yishmael just says that this cannot be talking about chazek trufa treik cannot be talking about a toida, because a toida itself that's eaten for a day and night. We only know that you do chazek tenufa shoyk hayamin only from a hekesh to shlamim. The Torah tells you by a toida you eat it the meat for day and night. But how do you know you're supposed to give the chazek hashnufa and shoyk hayamin to a kohen? That's a hekesh. So part of a toida is learned from a hekesh. The whole concept of chazek tenufa shoyk hayamin, of a toida is learned from a hekesh to shlamim. So one thing that we learned many times before, that something that is learned via hekesh, let's see if I have it over here, something that is learned via hekesh cannot teach it. If the first thing is learned by a hekesh, cannot reteach it to something else via a hekesh. So that's what we said before. So it must be that when the Torah compared a bechar, it was comparing it to a shlomim proper. So says the Gemara about Shmuel, if that's the case, then the Chayiyah is extra according to Rabbi Shmuel. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, he's going to say, Limid al Bechor Bal Mum Shimatan al Kohen. Shloi Mitzinu Bechol Hatayra Kula. Rabbi Shmuel is going to say that a Bechor, that this Bechor Yiyu teaches you another idea. That teaches you that if the Bechor has a mum, it's also supposed to be gifted to the Kohen, because we don't find that in the entire Torah. So that's the Chayiyah teaches you that a Bal Mum is gifted to a Kohen. Rabbi Kiva, how does he know that idea? That a Bal Mum Bechor is gifted to a Kohen? And says the Gemara, he Aleph Le Mipsarim. Chatam Cham Bal Mum. This he learns it from one is talking about Mipsarim, plural. The Torah tells you give the meat to a Kohen. So it's referring to both a whole Bechor is gifted to a Kohen and a Bal Mum is gifted to a Kohen. Rabbi Shmuel, what's Rabbi Shmuel do with Mipsaram? It's not Mipsaram, the Hanach Bechores. It's going back to of Div Kamar. It's going back to like a Bechor Shar, Bechor Kesef, Bechor Eis. That's why it's written in plural form, but not to teach you a Bechor Bal Mum. Point being is, and we're going to just touch on what the point of the Machlekes is. We'll go through very quickly the next Gemara. But the point over here is that when the Torah tells you Ubsaram Yia Lecha Kachazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin, there's a machlekes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva learned Chazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin refers to a taida, and therefore we know a bechor, which is Ubsaram, its meat is eaten for 1 day and 1 night. Lecha as extra, so the Torah gave an extra day for a bechor to be eaten. So it's therefore Shnei Yomim B'Layla Echad. According to Rabbi Yishmael, because you can't say that Chazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin refers to a taida, because taida itself, the concept of day and night by a taida I know from a taida, but the concept that it has a Chazei Tnufa and Ksheikei Yamin is only learned from a hekesh from Shlamim. So therefore, this Chazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin cannot refer to a taida, must only refer to a Shlamim, and the Chayiyu is teaching you another idea that a Bechor Bal Mum is also given to a Kohen. Now, the Gemara just asked one question, and B'mai Komi Palgi, what are they arguing? My Sovar Hemenu V'Daracha have a Hekesh. Umar Sovar Loi have a Hekesh. That's it. I'm going to discuss just this point. The basic concept of the Machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel is like this. Rabbi Shmuel says that because Toida is a partial hekesh, I know Chazei Tnufa and Ksheikei Yamin from a hekesh, but part of it is not a hekesh. Part of it is written in the Chumash by Toida itself. So can that, if a partial idea, if a concept, half of it is learned from a hekesh, half of it is learned because it's written by itself, can it teach somewhere else in the Kachim? Rabbi Shmuel says no, because unless something is completely written by Kachim A, then only then can it teach Kachim B. But if a thing is half written by Kachim A and half learned from somewhere else via a hekesh, so therefore Kachim A cannot teach Kachim B, and that's why Rabbi Shmuel said that pasuk cannot be talking about a taida, because taida itself, the concept of Chazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin is learned from a hekesh from Shlamim. But Rabbi Kiva holds Loi have a hekesh. That's not considered a hekesh. In other words, since it actually says that taida is eaten for a day and night, even though it doesn't say Chazei Yamin, but there's a concept that some of it is written in the Chumash, so that would have taught Bechor. That could teach Bechor the idea that it's day and night, and therefore that's why Rabbi Kiva said that you could learn that the pasuk of B'saram Yir Chazei Tnufa Ksheikei Yamin could refer to a taida. That's why the Chayiyah teaches by a carbon Bechor that you have an extra day. Let's go to Amud Beis. The Gemara says like this, and we'll conclude over here. Pesach ein nechal ela at chatzos. Right? We learned that the carbon Pesach in the Mishnah is only eaten till midnight. Mantana, who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yosef, he says it's Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you can't eat the carbon Pesach the entire night. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah oimer nemakam b'layla zeh. It says, but you should eat the carbon Pesach this night, by Seder night. And it says by the Makas Bechoros, God went and struck the Mitzrayim by that night. So just like the Makas Bechoros happened by midnight, so we see we learn in Gezer Shava that also the carbon pesach could only min haTorah be eaten up until midnight. So the Mishnah must go according to Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. The Torah says you should eat the carbon pesach until you were rushed out of there. And therefore, when were the Yidden actually rushed out of Mitzrayim? In the morning. So according to Rabbi Kiva, you have the entire night to eat the carbon pesach. So therefore, Rabbi Kiva disagrees with Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. So then what does Rabbi Kiva do? What does Rabbi Akiva do with Laila Zeh, which implies that you have until midnight to eat the carbon pesach? I would have thought I would think that you could eat the carbon pesach already the day that you shecht it, even start eating it on Erev Pesach. According to Rabbi Kiva, Balayla teaches you could only eat the carbon pesach at night and not an Erev Pesach during the daytime. But the bottom line is, if our Mishnah says you could eat the carbon pesach only at Chatzos, the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye said, the Dil Mamai Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. How do you know our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah? Udaraisa. Our Mishnah is talking about midaraisa, that you could only eat the carbon pesach till midnight. Dil Madurabonam ulahachek min ha'avera. How do you know? Maybe our Mishnah is just saying that the Rabbanan said you should eat it till midnight, because if they allowed you to eat it the whole night, you're going to push it off to the end of the night, and then you'll forget to eat the carbon pesach. So maybe our Mishnah is like Kriya Shema at Chatzos. So same till midnight. So maybe our Mishnah is midrabanan, and it goes according to even Rabbi Akiva. And says the Gemara, Imkei mat ella at chatzos. Why does the Mishnah say it could only be eaten ella at chatzos? Ki hasam. Ma hasam daraisa, afkan daraisa. So therefore, when the Torah says these things are ella this, ella that, it means that's the din min haTorah, that it could only be eaten till chatzos, just like anything elot tzli, so it could only be eaten roasted. So it must be our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah that the Karm Pesach could only be eaten till chatzos. Hadron Olech Ezehu Makayim. We start Be'ez Hashem the next parak Kodesh Kachay Kachem tomorrow.
Ah.